The French Revolution summarized in, I'm going to try to do this in 5 minutes, but I doubt that it will be able to. Anyway, so the French Revolution happened between 1789 and 1815, and essentially it happened for two reasons. The first being that in France at that time, it was in debt and the government sucked. I'll address the first one. First, obviously. Essentially, Louis XVI, the king at the time, helped the American Revolution by providing guns and ships. So all of its money had gone to that. And so it was already on the poor side. And in addition, that year, it just so happens that the crops had spoiled. So food prices went up. So widespread hunger occurred, essentially making it harder for the common people who were heavily taxed due to the States Generals, which was essentially the parliament in France. It consisted of 3 estates, the first being the nobility, the second being the clergy, and the third being the bourgeoisie, which is the common people. And the unjust part about that is that the clergy and the nobility get 2/3 of the votes. There are 300 votes respectively to each group, and those are the groups that don't pay for anything. They're not the ones who pay the taxes. The bourgeoisie are, and the bourgeoisie represent 98% of the population of France. So essentially, the rich are getting off the hook. They don't have to pay anything, and they're getting paid, while the poor people starve because they can't afford the food. So that was one of the reasons. That's the major reason why the French Revolution started. And so during this time, the Enlightenment was happening. Philosophers, philosophes were spreading their ideas, science, revolutionizing the world, and it was spreading all across Europe. And France was no exception, though it was a little bit different. So the Enlightenment in France, how it spread, happened via the Grub Street hacks, which were people who wrote adult fiction. And this adult fiction humanized or secularized the French monarchy. So it painted nobility as more attainable, more human, essentially negating the claim that their power was God-given. Not destroying the idea of absolute power, but making it seem more as the king's power resides in the country rather than in God. That was one of the big reasons why people started revolting, because why should I listen to you? You're doing a bad job, and God didn't give you this. No, your power comes in the country, and this is our country. That's what they thought. And so the people, the bourgeoisie, they had enough. They weren't getting real representation. It wasn't fair. So they broke from the Estates Generals, and they formed the National Assembly, which was essentially the people. And so the first meeting of the National Assembly was the place where it was going to happen. Louis XVI didn't want it to happen, so he decided to close the meeting place. And he assumed that if there was no place for them to meet, then they couldn't meet. That was not true. They persisted, and they met at a tennis court where they agreed to the tennis court oath. And Louis didn't like this, so he sent troops to quell the uprisings, but this only served to rile the revolutionaries, essentially breaking out in conflicts. So fast forward a few years, the revolution's still going on, the king doesn't have as much power, and I'm going to share a little anecdote with you because I think it is personally hilarious. So Marie Antoinette was rumored to have a secret stash of grain hidden in her room in the castle. And so a group of women in Versailles, which is where they lived, banded together and they went on what is now called the Women's March, where they grabbed their pitchforks and torches and they stormed the castle, demanding that the king and queen leave for Paris, which they did out of fear, which is understandable. So later, in 1793, both were beheaded, and the revolution continued. It didn't stop there. It continued until Napoleon in 1815, where it was stopped in its tracks. When asked whether the revolution was successful or not, I believe it was. It didn't have immediate effects. That's the thing. It wasn't an immediate thing because obviously Napoleon was a dictator. He got anything that was done with that in that time was gone. But France is a democracy now, has a president, which I think is pretty cool. And they did manage to maintain some of what they gained, what they fought for. They managed to maintain that. And in regards to the Haitian Revolution wouldn't have happened if the French Revolution didn't happen. But the Haitian Revolution was more successful in the moment, I suppose. That's how I would best describe it. But Haiti has a lot of problems, so it's kind of debatable whether they were successful or not. But I think they were. That's my opinion. Thank you.